going to introduce our next speaker is Elaine Godley, who's going to be joining us from Portugal. And I'm just going to give a little brief introduction to Elaine, because I think some people came on the call a little later than expected. So Elaine is the founder of the successful Facebook group called Perfect Health Wellness Club. She is a survivor of 4 different cancers, including stage 4 diagnosis, which offered her less than a year to live in 2015. She's a 3 times Amazon best-selling author and contributor to 8 books on health and business. Elaine shares her recovery strategies and explains how your behaviour affects your health. So I'd like to welcome Elaine. Thanks so much for joining us. Are you there?
I am indeed, Scott. Thank you very much for the invitation, and good afternoon, everybody, from a sunny Portugal. So when Scott asked me to contribute towards this forum, I had a fully operational laptop. I'm now speaking from a friend's Portuguese laptop that's got all sorts of squiggles and funny things on. So hopefully I'm going to get through this okay. First of all, I'll start just talking, and then I'll do a screen share with some slides. So as Scott mentioned, I have had 4 different versions of cancer, starting in 2009 with breast cancer. I was very hurried and frightened into having a mastectomy, and I had that in July 2009. In the following 18 months, I kept having all sorts of lumps and bumps appear, and the tests showed that it was just fat transference, because I had a procedure called a tram flap, which was quite unusual in those days, although I understand that they've now actually moved on and they don't do that procedure any longer. But the procedure was taking tissue, muscle, skin, etc. from my tummy and forming a new breast. And that's the title of one of my books. My right breast used to be my stomach. So, and I wrote that because there was nothing on the internet, no information, to support other women who may be going through that. So it's out there. Not my best work, I have to say, but it's out there, and it is useful for some people. So in 2011, intuitively, and I say to people so often, follow your gut, follow your intuition, because it's always, always right. How often do we hear that people say, oh, I should have done so-and-so, or I knew in my heart, in my gut, that I should have done this or that, and intellectually, we talk ourselves out. So always follow your intuition. It saved my life more than once. And in this situation, I intuitively felt something was wrong, had no evidence, no lumps, no bumps, no pain, no symptoms whatsoever. But I asked my team at John Radcliffe Hospital in the UK, would they test me out, because I think something's not right. They found a grade 3 tumour within the site of my mastectomy. So go figure, was that something that was there anyway? Is it something that had grown since? Was it from my stomach? Who knows? They couldn't explain it, and they have heard of it, but it's extremely rare. So typical, I was the one, and it was because of my intuition that I'm speaking to you today, really. Wow. So anyway, fast forward, I carried on with my life. I actually set up a business doing what Phil showed on his first slide with the cardiovascular health screening. And I had a business where I was screening people, showing the arterial age and how they could reverse their arterial stiffness. And so I've had a background in health for quite some time, not just my own personal experience. So I was running the clinics, and that was all fine. And then I had a bit of stress. Over my life, I've had actually quite a lot of stress, but different personality styles, which I'm going to go on to speak about, will handle stress in a different way. So over the years, I've become quite proficient in various aspects of business. I started my first business over 40 years ago in the kitchen industry, which was in the late 70s. And my then husband and I built the business to 2 million turnover, which in those days was a pretty decent business. We had kitchen showrooms all over London. We did all Harrods work. I can still go along the River Thames and point out all the buildings that we put kitchens in that I project managed. And it was a very interesting fast-paced, stressful, but fun time. So no regrets whatsoever. So obviously during that time there was quite a bit of stress. I remember one time an East End gangster came into one of their showrooms, put his gun on the counter, and then he said he was going to give me a monkey. I didn't know what a monkey was then. Apparently it's $500, pounds, whatever. So he shelled out this £500 on the counter as a deposit for something or other. And then I've had lords and ladies that I've been in their company and so on. So it was a very interesting time. I was in my 20s, and it was a great time, you know, to be in business. Everything went wrong in 1986, and husband of the day was an alcoholic, which I didn't know. I just thought everybody entertained at the pace that we were entertaining and drinking at the pace we were drinking, etc., etc. But actually that wasn't the case. But when you're in your own bubble, you don't know any different, you know. So anyway, 1986, one of us had to get a job. He carried on with his head in the sand and everywhere else, and I started work as a administrative assistant in a firm of accountants. Long story short, over the next 12 years, I got headhunted from place to place. I ended up being chief executive of a law firm. I did a master's degree in legal practice, and I became chief operating officer at Ernst & Young and ran one of their consulting divisions. And then in 1998, I had enough of the corporate nonsense, and I literally walked. In fact, I've just had an anniversary. It was the 11th of the 11th of 1998, and I literally walked out of my very high-paying role because culturally things didn't sit right with me, and values and that kind of thing, which is so important. And when you're in a role that doesn't suit who you are, it's just vitally important to work out a way on how you can be yourself, because if you're constantly being told to do a certain thing that doesn't fit with who you are, that's going to build up health stresses. It's going to build up disease. It's going to turn into disease and illness, because if you're one person outside of work, you go to work and you're expected to turn into another type of behaviour, that's not good for anybody. And I've seen it happen so often. People who wear uniforms, for example, outside of work, they're pussycats. They put on a uniform and they turn into, you know, authoritarian, you must do this, you must do that sort of thing. Seen it time and time again. So that was a stressful time again. And then I decided I was going to become a business consultant. So since 1998, on and off, I've been project managing, I've been helping with turnarounds, and particularly with team dynamics and the psychological aspects of our behaviour and how that impacts on team performance and the overall culture, etc., of an organisation. So during that time, I've learned an awful lot about behaviour. I've had various different training programmes that I've been on, and so on and so forth. And the DISC model of behavioural profiling is something that kept on and on coming up on my radar. So I decided to get trained, and again, over 20 years ago that was. So over the last 20 odd years, I have used DISC in so many different environments and been able to work out how we can help ourselves health-wise through being who we are in our innate behaviours. Some people are more kind of outgoing and robust in nature. Some people are, you know, more delicate and sort of flower-like. And worry about things and so on. So I'm going to run you through in a moment the DISC behavioural profile that will help to explain this. So in the middle of all of that, I became, so from 98, coming out of my big corporate roles, etc., became a business consultant, everything's wonderful, great projects and so on and so forth. So the first thing I did on any project was to profile the team I was working with, which immediately brought down the barriers. It helped them to understand each other, why this person winds that person up, etc. It also gave them an opportunity to know about me. I'm a straight talker, you know, straight to the point, get on with it, you know, no shilly-shallying about, no fluff and nonsense, you know, this is who I am, so be prepared, basically. Anyway, I finished a big project. I was running the legal department as managing partner for a legal I had 50 lawyers and barristers and different people in the department. Finished that project in February 2009, and in March 2009 is when I got my diagnosis, so my first diagnosis. So kind of fast forwarding again, so that's a bit of, you know, the stress side of things and how I got into the behaviour. And then all the lumps and bumps, etc., kind of fast forwarding again, in July 2000 and when was it, 15, I was talking to my daughter on the phone, and my phone here or here, wherever it was at the time, and I was rubbing my neck and I thought, oh my God, and I had a lump the size of an egg on my neck. I'd had a couple of other small lumps pop up elsewhere, and some itching, and nobody seemed to worry about anything doctor wise. And then this lump came up. I thought, right, definitely this is it. And immediately I got a diagnosis after the testing, and it was stage 4 Hodgkin's lymphoma. So I'd previously learnt about cannabis oil, about health and diet and lifestyle. I was born with a kidney disease that wasn't detected until I was in my early 20s. I was a competitive swimmer in my teens, and I used to train twice a day. I represented my county at national level. So I was training twice a day, and in those days, a heavily chlorinated pool was the reason given for my constant waterwork infections or projectile vomiting. And what the condition was, eventually diagnosed as medullary sponge kidneys. So you have your kidneys, and then at the bottom you have all these tubes. So my tubes weren't working, and all the silt and muck was building up, and eventually would either come out, through projectile vomiting or the other end. So this was in my 40s. I was having a real problem with my back. So I went to see a chiropractor, and I'd been on antibiotics for 23 years, by the way. So from early 20s right the way through to when I was in my mid 40s. And I saw a chiropractor for a dodgy back that I've had on and off all my life. And he said the area that's most problematic is that of my kidneys and my bladder. So he did a lot of work there. His partner was a nutritionist and a shiatsu practitioner, so relaxation and diet and lifestyle. So I learned all about this, the importance of boosting your immune system through diet, exercise, chiropractic, stress release, all the rest of it. And then when I had my stage 4 diagnosis, I thought, right, okay, pull yourself together, woman. It's about time you because I'd fallen off the wagon a bit. I'd started to put weight on, and I decided that I was really going to go for it this time. I read up about cannabis oil. I'd done a nutrition. I'd qualified as a nutritionist, a nutritional advisor, and within 14 weeks I beat stage 4 cancer. I did have a teeny bit of chemotherapy, and it's not something that I would recommend everybody to do because a lot of the time it's not terribly effective. However, for lymph and blood cancers, it's 81% effective. So under my control, should we say, I then had I had a very good consultant who was happy to go along. She knew I was taking cannabis oil, the real stuff, not the CBD stuff that we have today. This is the real hardcore. And I was actually on a gram a day at one point. So all of that, all of the nutritional foods, juicing, relaxation, oxygen therapy, on and on. There's a whole list, and if you Google me, you'll find stuff on the internet, or I'm very happy to go through it. And I spend a lot of time volunteer mentoring people with cancer, and I've had some really good results with people who we've been able to bring through. So all in all, that's how I've learned about behaviour, through my own experience of stressful life, swimming, nutritional training, managing teams, that kind of thing. But the reason I chose the DISC model, and I'm going to share my screen now, I hope, share. Okay, can you see DISC on my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So DISC is the most widely used model in the world for behavioural profiling. Some people know it as personality profiling, and it stands for dominance, influence, steadiness and compliance. I actually use slightly different words to that one. I have my own system now, which is an online system, which I'm offering to schools free of charge, because I'm really keen for students to understand who they are before they apply to roles which are completely unsuitable for them. Because, as I said before, if you're in a role that's unsuitable for you, you're a square peg in a round hole, and you're not going to fit, and eventually you'll end up with ill health. and I can tell through the profiling what style of behaviour somebody has and what they're predisposed to. So I'm going to quickly run through, because I know we're going to be running out of time before, and I can talk for days on this subject. So do hook me in, Scott, if if I'm going over. Right. So D stands for the dominance. I've taught this in schools to many teachers over the years, as well as team leaders, and I still use the pictures, because when you see the pictures, that gives you an indication of the personality style. So the high D is somebody who's assertive, and all these good words here on the left. So they're strong words, they're robust words. So in certain situations, that's the type of behaviour that you want to see. But if you want hugs and cuddles and coochies, you're not going to get them from somebody like this. On a bad hair day, these people can come across as being quite aggressive, impatient, abrupt and insensitive, especially to the other behavioural styles who are less robust, shall we say. So to the softer styles, these are hard people to get on with. The I, again, using the picture, the dolphin is ducking here, ducking there, very social, lively, outgoing, life and soul, enjoys fun and free spirit, very, very free-spirited person. I wish I'd known this when I was at school, because I would have started my business sooner rather than wait until I was 21, 22 to start my first business, but there we go. So again, these can come across as being really irritating to people who like to keep their head down, people who are more introverted in style. So the D's and the I's are externally referenced, shall we say. They're out there. They're out there. Some eccentric sort of behaviours at times, whereas the S and the C are less outgoing. They're more introverted characteristics. So we've got the puppy, our bless type of thing here. So that the thing with these people is they're so nice and kind and loving and generous and all the rest of it, but they don't make decisions. So they don't want to make a decision, because they'll be sitting on they sit on the fence, because if they make a decision, it's not the right decision. So they worry themselves to death. Whereas the D's could be considered as warriors. These are considered as warriors. So you can imagine the types of behaviours, and in a work situation how you could get very easily a bully situation, because these people take everything personally, and as a result their health is likely to suffer as well, because they will get all kinds of health challenges. The owl, these are the all-seeing, all-knowing people who don't say very much, but when they do, they're very quite, pithy and to the point. Sometimes the high C can be taken as a high D person, because they are very rule book driven, and if somebody's beating you over the head with a rule book, they can come across as being authoritative, when in fact it's the rules that's driving them. So my words, as I've said, I don't use the traditional. Sorry, these beg your pardon. Yeah, then that's right. Direct. So I use direct, inspiring, supportive, and conscientious, which are not the traditional words, but I've still kept the disc mnemonic. Some behavioural styles are coloured. So these are similar to the colours. If you've been profiled by a coloured system, this is what they represent. So we've got lots of opposites. I haven't got time to run through now, because I think we're going to be running out of time if I go through it all. Let's see if I can. Okay, this slide here. So types of health challenges that people are predisposed to are on the screen here. Again, I think Scott's going to be sending around the slides if anybody would like them. So high blood pressure and overindulgence, depression, adrenal conditions, cardiovascular problems, burnout, that sort of thing for the D's and the I's. So they're obvious. You can often tell somebody who's got high blood pressure just by looking at them. The D's try to do everything, they want everything their way, and the I's do way too much. They overpromise and they end up doing too much and they burn out. The S's and the C's, you can see here, they worry about anything and everything. They worry if they've got nothing to worry about. And the C's hold on to thoughts and to things. So again, different health challenges that people are likely to suffer with. At the bottom, you'll see everybody there has the potential for blocked arteries, which can lead to heart attack and stroke. So if you're not being yourself, not being your natural self, you will you will come a cropper, shall we say. So I haven't got time to go through any of the other slides, but it's very simple to have a DISC profile, and if anybody would like to have their own one, I've got an online system that I can share if that's of help. So hopefully that gives you an indication that it's just so important to be who you are, because your behaviour is going to get in your own way with your health.
Okay, Elaine, that's wonderful. And in fact, I can say that there's a few people I can think of that fit in all those categories. I did the DISC profiling with you, and it is very revealing, isn't it? It really is. You know, you start to see. I mean, effectively, you go through a multiple choice question. I forget how many questions there were now. Can you remind me? Was it 50 or 60? I think,
yeah, no, it's 24 question sets, and you say within each question set there's four words or phrases.
Yes, that's right.
Which is most like you, which is least like you, and then that goes into the system and it pops out with a report.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It really is, and it was quite a struggle actually to get through it, because I wanted to answer all of them at the same time. but no, it's great. And we've got some questions for you. Are you okay with that?
Absolutely, yes. Yeah.
Okay, so how can you tell if someone is likely to be ill from looking at their profile?
Okay, so the report comes out with graphs. So we have an internal graph, so a line graph. So we've got lines up and down, so we can see what we call the high behaviours, which are we have a centre line, and we have PIS and C, and we've got this line pattern. So from the internal pattern, if there is change between the person's natural behaviour and their current external behaviour, and the system works out from the question responses, if we see a difference, we can assess, well, I assess, and the system does it, and then I can make a commentary about it. We can see who is likely to be poorly, if they are poorly, and what they're likely to be suffering with according to their personality type. Now, this is not validated. However, it goes back to Hippocrates, who first identified the four humours, as he called them then. And there are a number of reports. You just Google DISC, and you'll find all sorts of information out there on how it does relate to health. But I don't know any consultant who actually relates it to health. But given my journey, I have no option but to talk about it and combine it, because I just feel I have a duty now.
Well, it's about it. It's your interpretation that based on your experience and skills, really, I suppose.
Yes. So it's the difference between the internal and the external, and the measurements, and then I can assess. And obviously, the consultation that I have with people on Zoom will then give me information, and I can contextualize it for their situation, so their life makes sense. In other words, when they see the line graphs and so on.
Okay, so another question we've got is, what kind of illnesses and disease can you spot from someone's profile?
Well, on the last graph, the last chart that I briefly showed, the depending how strong somebody's profile is in a certain area, so you could be what we call a high D on a 52% measurement, or you can be a 95% measurement. And depending upon where you are on the chart in all of the different characteristics, that will give an indication on how likely you are to be predisposed to the conditions that I shared on the slide. It's not hard and fast, and it obviously depends on people's background, their culture, their environment, how stressed they've been or they are, etc., etc. So it's not a hard and fast science. But in all the hundreds and hundreds, probably thousands of people I've mentored now over the years, the patterns don't lie every time, and I've got to the point where I can predict what's happening. Alongside that, I offer a variety of different home testing as well now, alongside with the health. So the behavioural profile is just one of the testings that I offer, and that whole picture then tells us. So I've got the dry blood analysis, hair tissue mineral analysis, an online metabolic analysis, and the behavioural profile. So all of that gives an indication of what's happening inside the person and with the external behaviour, and they receive reports that they can see it's their information fed back to them.
Okay, so you mentioned we have an adaptability range. What is the average that you see in profiles?
Well, everybody can adapt their behaviour. we can all pretend to be somebody we're not. So particularly in recruitment situation, somebody will sit there across the desk. Well, hopefully one day we'll be allowed to do that again. And you can pretend to be somebody that you're not. So typically people can modify their behaviour by an adaptability factor of between 5 and 20%. That's the majority of what I say. I very rarely see people who can adapt more than 20%. And by adapting, it means, so for example, my profile, my C is on the floor. I'm not a detailed, person who's in the remotest bit interested in detail. So my C, my conscientiousness, my compliance is on the floor. However, when I did my master's degree, I had to knuckle under and be, very, very good for 3 months while I did that particular module that I required that behaviour. So I can modify my own personal modification is anywhere between 75 and 90%, which is great for me, but it causes other people a problem because they don't always know how to take me. So the 5 to 20% is average. Very rarely you get over that. If you do get over that, it's normally with the D and the I behaviours. They are the most adaptable.
Well, it's a sort of chameleon effect. In fact, you depending on your sort of surroundings and circumstances and people you're working with, I suppose, is it?
Yes, and also how your kind of experiences over the years have molded you. Lots of people say to me, "Oh, my job's made me like this." No, very rare that happens because your behaviour is kind of fixed by the time you're 7. The Jesuits have a name. Give me the boy, a saying. Give me the boy till he's 7, and I'll give you the man. So that's why when people have problems in the older life, older age, they go back to the childhood, and our behaviours in the childhood and our environment then kind of fixed who we are. So we mould and we learn to manage, we learn to adapt.
Well, it's fascinating. It's like everybody that's speaking today, I could listen to a lot more. And thank you so much for taking time to come on the call from, well, we don't keep mentioning sunny Portugal because we're all going through rough weather over this side. But thank you once again, Elaine. Please do stay on the